the galaxy's most legendary warriors and its mystical guardians of peace. For millennia, they stood as bitter enemies, their blood-soaked history defining Star Wars as we know it. But what if this centuries-old conflict never happened? What if instead of endless war, the Mandalorians and Jedi formed the most powerful alliance the galaxy had ever seen? The fate of the Republic, the Empire, and even the Skywalker Saga would be unrecognizable. Today, we're exploring the massive ripple effects this alliance would create and how it would completely transform the Star Wars universe forever. Before we dive into our alternate timeline, we need to understand the actual history between these two warrior cultures. The Mandalorian-Jedi conflict dates back thousands of years. The Mandalorians, with their unique Beskar armor and warrior culture, viewed the Jedi as worthy opponents. Their entire society evolved around combat prowess, and what better test than facing warriors with supernatural abilities? The origins of this rivalry trace back to the early days of the Old Republic. Mandalorian expansion brought them into direct conflict with Jedi-protected worlds. The Mandalorians saw the Jedi's Force abilities as a challenge to overcome, while the Jedi viewed Mandalorian aggression as a threat to galactic peace. This fundamental difference in philosophy, the Mandalorian way of strength through conquest versus the Jedi commitment to peace and defense, created an ideological divide that seemed impossible to bridge. The conflict reached its peak during the Mandalorian Wars, when Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders launched a massive expansion campaign against the Republic. The Jedi Council initially refused to intervene, leading Revan and Malak to defy orders and lead Republic forces against the Mandalorians. The war ended with Revan defeating Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat on Malachor. This devastating defeat fractured Mandalorian society and scattered their clans across the galaxy. Following this defeat, Mandalorians entered a long period of decline and internal conflict. Their warrior culture persisted, but their united front was shattered. Different factions emerged, from traditionalists to reformers like Satine Kryze, who tried to transform Mandalore into a pacifist society. The conflict continued through various periods, including the Clone Wars, where Death Watch sought to restore their warrior heritage. The involvement of Maul and later the Empire further complicated Mandalorian history and their relationship with the Jedi. By the time of the Empire, both the Jedi Order and Mandalorian culture had been pushed to the brink of extinction. Their ancient rivalry was overshadowed by simple survival. But what if things had gone differently? What if, instead of endless conflict, these two warrior cultures had recognized their shared values? How might the galaxy have evolved if these two legendary forces had combined their strengths rather than opposing each other? To create our alternate timeline, we need a logical point of divergence, a moment when history could have realistically taken a different path. Let's place this divergence during the early days of the Old Republic, specifically during the first major conflicts between Mandalorians and Jedi. Imagine that instead of viewing the Force as a threat or competition, early Mandalorian culture recognized it as another form of strength. Meanwhile, instead of seeing Mandalorians as mindless warriors, the Jedi respected their code of honor and combat discipline. The key catalyst, a Jedi anthropologist discovers that early Mandalorian and Jedi codes share surprising similarities in their emphasis on discipline, personal growth, and protecting the innocent. This Jedi translates the ancient Mandalorian Resol Nara, the 6 tenets of Mandalorian life, and finds parallels to Jedi teachings. Both cultures value training and discipline, loyalty to their clan order, protection of the next generation, honor in combat and actions, personal growth and improvement. This discovery sends ripples through both societies. Progressive elements within the Jedi Order begin studying Mandalorian combat techniques, recognizing that understanding an adversary could lead to greater wisdom. Meanwhile, certain Mandalorian clans, perhaps those who had seen too much senseless bloodshed, become interested in Jedi philosophy. The breakthrough comes when a Force-sensitive child is born to a prominent Mandalorian clan. Instead of taking the child away, As was Jedi custom, a forward-thinking Jedi Master proposes a radical alternative: joint training. The child would learn both Mandalorian warrior arts and Jedi disciplines, becoming a bridge between cultures. This experiment proves successful beyond all expectations. The child grows into a powerful warrior with a balanced perspective that draws from both traditions. Other Mandalorian clans, seeing the advantages, begin allowing their Force-sensitive children to receive similar training. Through this understanding, a tentative alliance forms between certain Jedi temples and Mandalorian clans, initially for mutual defense only. This alliance is tested when both groups face a devastating invasion from unknown regions, perhaps early Sith or Nihil raiders. Fighting back-to-back, the Mandalorians' tactical brilliance combines perfectly with Jedi foresight and Force abilities. The raiders, expecting to face divided opposition, instead encounter a unified force that exploits their every weakness. Mandalorian Beskar armor proves resistant to Sith lightning, while Jedi Force abilities counter the raiders' superior numbers. The success of this defense cements their alliance, beginning centuries of cooperation instead of conflict. Word spreads throughout both cultures of the victory achieved through unity, and what began as an isolated experiment grows into a movement that transforms the galaxy. As generations pass, the alliance evolves into a true cultural exchange, fundamentally reshaping both societies in ways that strengthen each while preserving their core identities. The Mandalorian academies begin incorporating meditation and Force awareness training for all their warriors, not just those who are Force sensitive. This training enhances their already formidable combat abilities, allowing them to better anticipate opponents and maintain focus during battle. Meanwhile, Jedi initiates receive basic training in Mandalorian combat forms, making them more effective fighters even without relying on the Force. This practical approach grounds their training in reality and helps prevent the complacency that would eventually weaken the canonical Jedi Order. Most significantly, Mandalorian children found to be Force-sensitive are trained in both traditions, creating a new class of warrior: Force-wielding Mandalorians who combine Beskar armor, jetpacks, and traditional weapons with lightsabers and Force powers. Meanwhile, some Jedi adopt elements of Mandalorian culture, particularly their focus on family bonds and practical combat training. This creates a more balanced Jedi Order, one that doesn't require abandoning familial connections. The traditional Jedi prohibition against attachments is reconsidered, as Mandalorians demonstrate how family bonds can strengthen rather than weaken a warrior's resolve. This leads to a more nuanced understanding of the Force, one that acknowledges emotions rather than suppressing them. Mandalorian crafting techniques influence Jedi equipment design. Beskar reinforced Jedi robes provide protection while maintaining flexibility. Some Jedi even adopt modified Mandalorian helmets with enhanced sensory capabilities, helping them when they need to shield themselves from Force detection. This cultural exchange creates new traditions and technologies. Beskar lightsaber hilts become prized possessions, while Mandalorian jetpack designs incorporate Force-enhanced efficiency. Specialized training facilities emerge that cater to both traditions, often built on worlds with significant Force nexuses. Most importantly, this alliance creates a formidable peacekeeping force that combines Mandalorian tactical brilliance with Jedi wisdom and Force abilities. Their joint operations become legendary for both effectiveness and restraint, using precisely the right amount of Force needed, no more and no less. With the Mandalorian-Jedi alliance securing the Outer Rim, the Republic expands more safely and efficiently. Mandalorian shipbuilding expertise combined with Jedi diplomatic skills creates secure hyperspace routes that might never have existed in the original timeline. These new routes don't just facilitate trade, they fundamentally reshape galactic demographics and politics. Worlds that were previously too remote or dangerous to settle become accessible, leading to a more evenly distributed galactic population. The presence of Mandalorian Jedi peacekeepers in the Outer Rim dramatically reduces piracy and slavery, leading to more prosperous frontier worlds. Planets like Tatooine develop into thriving trade centers, rather than lawless outposts. A new approach to law enforcement emerges in these frontier regions. Instead of imposing Republic law from above, Mandalorian-Jedi peacekeepers work with local communities to develop systems that respect both Republic standards and local traditions. This bottom-up approach creates more stable societies with greater buy-in from local populations. These successes don't go unnoticed by the Republic's political establishment. As Outer Rim worlds prosper, they begin demanding greater representation in galactic governance. Politically, Mandalore gains representation in the Galactic Senate, providing a powerful voice for Outer Rim concerns. This political influence counterbalances core world dominance and reduces the corruption that plagued the late Republic. The trade guilds and corporate interests that dominated Senate politics in the canonical timeline face effective opposition from this new coalition of Outer Rim representatives. Their monopolistic practices are challenged, creating a more equitable economic system. Most crucially, this alliance directly impacts Palpatine's rise to power. The enhanced security and reduced corruption make his manipulations more difficult. The presence of Mandalorian intelligence networks, less susceptible to Force manipulation, could potentially uncover his Sith identity earlier. The Mandalorian approach to intelligence gathering, based on direct observation and physical evidence rather than Force insights, provides a crucial counterbalance to Palpatine's ability to cloud Jedi perception. Where the Jedi might be misled by dark-side machinations, Mandalorian investigators follow the credits and the data. The Clone Wars themselves would be fundamentally different. Clone trooper training would incorporate Mandalorian combat techniques from the beginning, creating more independent and effective soldiers. Jango Fett, in this timeline, might be a respected Mandalorian-Jedi liaison rather than a bounty hunter. With Mandalorian oversight of the cloning process, the inhibitor chips might never be implemented, or if they were, Mandalorian techs might discover them during routine inspections, preventing Order 66 entirely. With Mandalorian strategic input and additional Jedi commanders who understand practical warfare, Republic victories come more quickly and decisively. The Separatist movement might still emerge, but without Palpatine's hidden manipulation, genuine negotiation becomes possible. Perhaps the most dramatic change in our alternate timeline concerns Anakin Skywalker himself, the fulcrum upon which the entire Star Wars saga turns. In a Jedi Order influenced by Mandalorian values, Anakin's attachment to his mother and later Padme wouldn't be forbidden. It would be understood and guided. This nuanced approach prevents the festering shame and secret-keeping that proved so toxic in the original timeline. When Anakin and Padme fall in love, their relationship develops openly rather than in secrecy. Mandalorian culture provides a model for how a warrior can maintain both family connections and duty. Later, when Anakin has visions about Padme dying in childbirth, instead of turning to Palpatine in secret, he could consult Mandalorian medical specialists experienced with Force-sensitive births. This support network prevents his desperate fall to the dark side. Without Anakin's fall providing him with a powerful apprentice, Palpatine's position grows increasingly precarious. His careful manipulations begin to unravel as the combined insight of Jedi seers and Mandalorian intelligence agents piece together his true identity. The Republic undergoes reforms rather than transformation into an empire. The Mandalorian-Jedi alliance serves as a check against corruption and tyranny, ensuring a more balanced galactic government emerges from the crisis. Perhaps most importantly, Anakin Skywalker fulfills his destiny as the Chosen One by bringing balance to the Force. Not through destruction and rebirth, but through synthesis and harmony between different traditions and approaches to the Force. The Reformed Republic, with significant Mandalorian influence, becomes more decentralized and respectful of local sovereignty. The rigid centralization that made the canonical Republic vulnerable to Palpatine's takeover is replaced by a more flexible confederation. Individual sectors gain greater autonomy while still contributing to galactic defense and economic cooperation. This confederated approach creates resilience. No single point of failure can bring down the entire system. Political power becomes distributed across multiple centers throughout the galaxy, with the Mandalorian-Jedi alliance acting as peacekeepers rather than enforcers. The Jedi Order, balanced by Mandalorian pragmatism, evolves into a very different institution. No longer isolated in a temple on Coruscant, their presence spreads organically throughout the galaxy. They serve as guides rather than rulers, offering wisdom while respecting local governance. New Jedi Mandalorian academies spread throughout the galaxy, training both Force users and non-Force users in complementary traditions. These academies emphasize both spiritual growth and practical skills, creating more balanced protectors who understand both the mystical aspects of the Force and the pragmatic realities of galactic life. Force-sensitive Mandalorians become a new kind of guardian, able to combine Beskar armor's resilience with Force abilities. Meanwhile, Jedi gain tactical skills and community connections that make them more effective and grounded in everyday reality rather than isolated in philosophical abstraction. The Outer Rim, with Mandalorian guidance, develops unique technologies and cultures that rival the core worlds, creating a more balanced galaxy economically and politically. Planets that were once lawless outposts become thriving centers of trade and innovation, their unique circumstances driving solutions that might never have emerged in the more homogeneous core. But the galaxy still faces threats, perhaps even greater ones from beyond known space. The Mandalorian-Jedi alliance prepares for these challenges, combining ancient wisdom with innovative technology and tactics. Their balanced approach, neither too rigid like the old Jedi Order nor too aggressive like traditional Mandalorian culture, creates a resilience that the canonical timeline lacked. This alliance between Mandalorians and Jedi would have created a stronger, more balanced galaxy, one potentially capable of facing threats that would have overwhelmed either group alone. The synergy between Mandalorian resilience and Jedi insight creates something greater than the sum of its parts. But while this alliance solved many problems, it may have created new ones. Without the purifying fire of the Empire era, would the galaxy develop the same fierce determination that ultimately toppled the Emperor? Without the devastating losses of the Jedi Purge, would complacency eventually set in? And would the threats from beyond known space, the far outsiders that canonical Luke Skywalker and his new Jedi Order faced, arrive to find a more unified defense? Or would they exploit new weaknesses created by this alliance? Would the balance between light and dark sides of the Force create new forms of Force use we've never seen? The nature of the Force itself might evolve differently in this timeline. With Mandalorian pragmatism influencing Jedi philosophy, might the rigid distinction between light and dark give way to a more nuanced understanding? Perhaps Force users in this timeline would neither be Jedi nor Sith, but something new entirely. These questions remind us of the complex web of cause and effect that shapes galactic history. Even the most positive changes create ripple effects impossible to fully predict. The Mandalorian-Jedi alliance would transform the galaxy in wondrous ways, but no utopia is without its challenges. And speaking of transformative relationships, what if the connection between Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala wasn't just love, but something far more powerful and ancient in the Force itself? What if their meeting wasn't simply chance, but the will of the Force bringing together two halves of something extraordinary? What if they were actually a Force dyad, a connection so rare and powerful that it happens only once in generations? A power that even Palpatine couldn't fully comprehend, yet inadvertently helped create. How would this change everything we know about their relationship, Anakin's fall, and the entire Skywalker legacy? Would it explain why their children became so powerful? Why the Force seems to flow so strongly through their bloodline? Could this connection have been the true prophecy all along? Not just Anakin as the chosen one, but Anakin and Padme together as a dyad that would bring balance to the Force through their legacy. And if the Force itself bound them together in this profound way, what destiny might they have fulfilled if circumstances had been different? What power might they have wielded together if Anakin had never fallen? If you've enjoyed this journey through an alternate Star Wars timeline, there are more untold stories waiting to be discovered. Join our growing community of Star Wars enthusiasts who believe in exploring these what-if moments that could have changed the galaxy far, far away. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and activate notifications to catch our next alternative Star Wars story. Each tale offers a new perspective on the characters we love and the choices that define them. Remember to share your thoughts in the comments below. What other pivotal moments in the Star Wars saga would you like to see explored differently? Your ideas might inspire our next adventure. May the Force be with you, always.